And go ahead and open the rooms.
Cool.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of the Solidarity School syllabus. Welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and switch a couple of hot mics here. Welcome to this next edition of the Solidarity School syllabus. I'll go ahead and hand it off to the facilitators for this particular session today in just a moment. But first, I just wanted to welcome you and introduce myself. I'm Mike Strode. I'm Program Officer here at Open Collective Foundation. Open Collective Foundation is a national 501c3 fiscal sponsor of more than 400 civic, social, educational, and mutual aid groups throughout the U.S. And we provide a financial and a legal commons, a shared infrastructure that those groups can use to move their mission forward. As we say, we take care of the paperwork and allow them to focus on their mission. So we provide a place for them to hold money, to use that transparent budgeting, to use this money management tool that is not only shared by Open Collective Foundation, but connects projects across the globe in an infrastructure in which they can share and see how money is spent within their projects. And so I, as program officer, what I try to do is I try to foster community building, and I try to foster collaboration amongst the projects in that network. I put together things like this particular collaborative funding training that we'll be having with Cobudget today. And also I try to just think about, what are some new service offerings that we can extend.
Join the meeting.
So those are things that that I do within the Open Collective Foundation, and those are things that Open Collective Foundation does more broadly. This particular training will be squarely focused on the collaborative funding dimension. We'll be building on some of the concepts for those of you who may have had a chance to attend a previous session on participatory budgeting, where we focused on the framework around how you can build participatory budgets within your organizations. We'll be focusing now on a specific tool training around a way that you can do that type of collaborative funding or participatory budgeting within a group, within a collective. So I will be posting a little bit of my information in the chat in a moment, just in case you want to follow up and learn more about Open Collective Foundation or our fiscal sponsorship program. And I'll also be posting that Solidarity School syllabus for you to take a glance at. And if you do have any questions, I will be hanging about here in the chat, and I'll also be available for my modest tech support, throughout the session. So if you have any trouble, you can go ahead and ping me and check with me. But for now, I'll go ahead and hand it to Mommy from Cobudget. Check.
Thank you, Mike, and hello, everyone. Really excited to be here today. I'm here with my colleague, David, from Greater Than, and yeah, we've been so looking forward to this opportunity. We have a long relationship with Open Collective, and we're just so energized to see so much interest in today's event. Let me share my screen. I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. As Mike said, learn the basics of collaborative funding, and a lot of our time will then be spent on looking at Cobudget, the tool itself. And then we'll also have plenty of space more towards the end of our time together to discuss ideas on how you might be interested in a collaborative funding process for your groups, any questions or advice that we can share, or any advice that can be shared within the groups. We would be very happy to help facilitate. And so I'll start with a 10-minute or so talk on the basics of collaborative funding. And yeah, I'll say right now, we'll have time for you to actually use the tool. So if you're on a mobile, we would encourage you to join from the desktop and be prepared to chat with your colleagues in the workshop here today. All right, so David and I are part of a group called Greater Than. We're a global collective, and we believe that the way we organize changes everything. And we work between the overlap of organizational change and personal change. And I think a lot of the groups on Open Collective also share this, this belief. And Cobudget has a very long history coming out of different self-organized groups. And it was only last year that the group, kind of the current group that is stewarding it now, came together. Greater Than is an organizational partner, but Cobudget itself is hosted by, is stewarded by a new cooperative that's been set up in Sweden. And I see my colleague Hugi in our workshop also today. You might have met him in other contexts. And yeah, we have been working together for about a year to develop the product and have now kind of come out of our product building phase to try to meet more people who are curious to start incorporating the Cobudget process. All right, and yes, so I'm Tomumi, and so I'm a member at associate at Greater Than, interested in how we design the conditions of how individuals can thrive together. And on the Cobudget project, I've been working mainly as a designer. David, do you want to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Glad to meet you today. I'm a Greater Than partner, also part of the Cobudget team since 1.5 years now. Happy to co-steward this project. I've been a long-term user while co-building the WeShare community. And so, yeah, very happy now to be able to support the project. Anything else before checking in, Tomomi?
Just to mention, I forgot that Cobudget is an open source project. And I think part of what's really interesting that it's a tech project that's developed in an open source way. And yeah, part of why we're here today is to try to share our practice around it and invite other groups that want to explore that aspect with us. Over to you, David.
Yeah, so before we jump right into it, we'd also like to hear from you guys what is actually your reason for joining and what you connect to the topic at hand, collaborative funding. So in the chat, I shared a link to the slide deck that we're currently using that Tomomi currently is also sharing. And on slide, I think it's slide 4. No, slide 5. We'd like to invite you just for a quick reflection on curiosity. Why are you here today? Why are you joining this session today? And we're going to send you into breakouts after a minute or so, where you're going to meet a colleague or a fellow. Whoops, I'm getting some feedback here. Where you're going to meet a fellow participant to check in together and also answer this question: what does collaborative funding mean to you? But first, let's have a look at why you're here, and we would be happy to also read from you. So feel free to add your comments to slide 4 or 5 in one of the empty post-its. And yeah, as Mike is sharing, if you're having troubles accessing the slides or accessing or writing in the slides, please share in the chat. And in a couple of seconds, you will be magically brought into a breakout room where you're going to meet another fellow human here from this group to check in. And I'm also quickly sharing the questions in the chat. And sharing the slide deck for those who just joined.
And David, just let me know you want pairs there.
I'm just creating the breakouts of 3 to 4 people. Thanks a lot, Mike. And It will be groups of 3 to 4 people, and we're going to meet back here in 9 or 10 minutes. That should work. Okay. Enjoy and see you back in a couple of minutes. What does collaborative funding mean to you? So I hope this worked, that I didn't send you away to Momi and Mike.
I am ignoring my invite.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had the chance to connect with someone from the community. Oh, if someone has their sound on, okay, thank you. All right, let's jump right into some of the content. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes on the basics from participatory budgeting to collaborative funding. So the larger context that Cobudget and what we call the practice of collaborative funding comes from is participatory budgeting. And this originated from and still mostly refers to the civic context. Porto Alegre is famous for having started one of the first civic participatory budgets. The city of Paris is also quite well known for this. And there are many and growing examples of this type of budgeting at the city and municipal levels, and a suite of tools that support this. For those of you who joined OCF's training with the participatory budgeting project, you probably have heard more deeply about this. And what we're talking about here today is related, but is different from this type of participatory budgeting. Cobudget and collaborative funding that we're looking at today emerged from self-organized communities such as the Inspiral Network, who are looking for ways to democratize and distribute financial decision-making within their group. So the important difference here to civic participatory budgeting is that this practice comes from the context of having an organization or group with a clear boundary, which I believe is your situation as well. So looking at the Inspiral example, David, if you could go, thank you. Their need was to create an accessible, engaging process that allowed everyone to meaningfully engage with the budget regularly and have real control over the funds they were contributing without overtaxing their valuable time and energy. And this is how Inspiral began developing lots of different tools and practices to share power, money, and information, often starting off with basic spreadsheets for these processes, and then creating more mature tools, one of which ended up being Cobudget. And such collaborative funding practices didn't just emerge in one place at a time, but have taken shape in many different types of groups, some of which heavily influenced each other, others which developed similar practices independently, and there being like a wide variety of grassroots communities, collective distributed networks, and now also in the Web3 space, including also the Borderland Festival from Denmark. So why do we like to use the term funding instead of budgeting? This semantic element points us towards the larger shift in mental model that Cobudget as an approach to financial decision-making is trying to put forward. And it's not a small one. Budgeting is about planning and predicting, which is increasingly difficult to do well in the world that we live in today. There's the need to find a good balance between being responsive and dynamic, while also being strategic with financial decisions and not only reactive. And this is where what we call the round comes in. After many years of experimenting with collaborative funding in different contexts, a very useful design element that has crystallized is the concept of having a funding round, which is the time-bound process during which a specific group allocates funds to a set number of projects or buckets. After this, we'll have the chance to set up a fund around yourself. And so Cobudget as a tool is designed around this concept of around, and a lot of the support that we provide to groups who want to do this kind of funding revolves around how to design such a round in a way that best suits your specific group, use cases, and objectives. It doesn't mean that you have to use this approach, like you can continue to have the funding be open, but it's simply what we recommend, especially if you're just getting started. It's good to have like the beginning and an end. So here, you can see the typical stages that one would go through to run a full collaborative funding round. And we have a lot of support materials that can help you with the design and setup phases and guide you through key questions that you need to answer at that stage. And we also provide support for groups to host these kinds of rounds. And just to give you a better idea of what we're referring to with the setup, here are some of the top questions that you would need to answer to get started with Cobudget. And so, yes, there is the platform, which is quite a simple tool for groups to get set up and learn how to use. But there's also a very, very strong element of designing the participatory process and activating the community in a way that fits with how your group interacts with each other. And by distribution model, which is one of the questions, we mean how the funds available are distributed among the decision makers, which David will explain a bit later after we show you Cobudget, the tool. And before we move on to the next part of the training, this is an overview of how many groups use Open Collective and Cobudget in combination. So Open Collective is used for collecting the funds and dispersing them. And Cobudget is like that black box in the middle where the group needs to decide how to allocate the funds. This decision-making step can also happen through other tools like Lumio or simply live meetings. Yeah, and then next, David will show us the tool itself.
Yeah, thanks to Momi. So if you're already in the slide deck, I think Mike just reshared the link to that. You see this link by which you get to the Cobudget platform, but I'm also happy to give you a quick tour of the site. Just opening up the browser now and opening one of our rounds. Let me look. Okay, sharing my screen. Yep. So you should see my browser window now. Is that correct? Cool. So basically what you see here is a round. As Tomomi has shared before, this is basically the heart where basically people meet around a shared purpose. And basically what you see here is like the overview. So what this round is about. This is like an example art fund that my colleague Hugi set up, I think. Basically, this is like an art fund as an example. And what you see here is the funds that are available in this round. So for as an example, here you see the total amount of Swedish crowns that are total available in this round, but also how much I myself have available in this round. And basically, the heart of all of this, basically how initiatives are put forward, how projects are put forward, are what we call the buckets. So here you see different buckets within this round. And if I click on one of those buckets, I can see the details of that buckets. So there is a description, of course, also a title, what the funding goal is, how much of the funding goal is actually already funded. In this case, the bucket is already funded completely. And you see the description. So this is basically the details of this bucket. So what is this bucket about? What is needed? And actually the budget of this bucket. So what is actually needed here? And that basically sums up to the full funding amount. But you can also list here some non-monetary contributions, and then you end up with the funding goal. Within this bucket, people can also basically co-create and discuss and give feedback to each other. This is happening actually in the comments section. So people here can discuss this bucket, can give feedback to each other, also ask questions in order to clarify what this bucket is about. And you also have the chance to actually see who co-funded this specific bucket. And here, obviously, you can also see that this bucket was set up, co-created by Donkey, and also by December last year. And if I have a new idea, I can basically click here and create a new bucket, which can be any idea that you have, which brings me, a typo, brings me to this page, which is basically still empty. It's blank, where I can write the summary and the cover image, basically what you have seen before. Add images, this description. So basically everything that you saw before as a blank. And a lot of this here can be customized. So you can basically, as an admin, design what is the information that you want people to display here. I'm gonna look at that in a second. And what's also maybe important to know is how people actually join your round. So basically, you can here see all the participants of a round, and you can select how people can actually join them. So here you have a registration policy, which basically allows you to set whether people can just, by clicking the link, join the round, or whether you want people to request whether they are allowed to join, or whether this is actually invite only. So depending on the use case, depending on your community, you might want to use either or of those settings. What else? Yeah, there's also an about page, basically where you can see more what this specific round is about. And also what are the guidelines. We're going to look into that in detail a bit later. You can also see what are the funding settings, what are the total amount of funds that are available, what is unallocated, and what amount of the funds are still to be allocated. I just mentioned the guidelines. So in this case, here you see what are the specific guidelines of that round. So basically, here is specified what can be funded and what cannot. And you can really customize those. So if I go into the settings, basically, I can create new guidelines that that people should orient themselves around within this specific round. And yeah, I shared before that you can fully customize actually your bucket form. So basically, the information that you're asking from people. So you can basically create new fields and ask what is the information that people should provide. So in this case, for example, people would want to know about the artists that are setting up this project, and if people can actually co-create this idea, and how people can actually engage with this specific project. What else? There's also a review possibility. So you can basically enable a review, which basically is a function, a feature that enables the community to peer review the buckets. So basically, if I have a look at the buckets, the Temple of Tokamak, I can, since review is enabled here, I can basically have a look again at all the guidelines that are set here, and basically say, yes, looking at those guidelines, this bucket looks good to me, or it doesn't. Yeah, maybe also quite important is actually how you get the funds. So admins have the possibility to give people's funds within here, the participants tab. So they can either allocate a specific amount to all members, or they can do that for individual members. So I can add a few crowns to Panda's account here. Yeah, maybe this as a brief overview is enough for now. I think it would be actually nice for you also to have a look yourself. Over to you, Tomomi.
Yes, exactly. I think we just threw a lot of information at you in the last 20 minutes or so. And so we want to take a little bit of time and just have you click through a real round. Just going to put that link here. And I think David's going to play one song. And yeah, please just look through it and see the different ideas and the budgeting and comments that were happening. To give a bit of context, this was our round at Greater Than to run a series of internal projects. And so we had a 4-month window for people to come up with ideas, fund them, any project that they wanted to work on within that would help Greater Than. And we ran a co-budgeting process as in the beginning of that. And use this as a way to like select which ideas should get funding and who wanted to work on them. So hear from DJ David while you go ahead
Sorry.
and take a look around.
So we hope you were able to explore a bit. Of course, you will have a bit more time later during the session to test things and to try the platform. Before we do that, actually, we'd like to share a couple of words around how people are actually using the platform so far, and I'll give you a few examples. Yeah. So just in terms of like user groups or personas, so people or groups that are using the platform so far. One group really is teams and organizations that are using the platform to allocate together resources in their organization to different types and projects. So this is, for example, something that you just saw, the example that Tomomi shared, our Greater Than Hikes is one of those examples, right? So there is a fixed budget of this organization or the team, and that fixed budget is then allocated collaboratively. That can be around like innovating together, that can be exploring new products, internal projects, prototypes, new ideas, but also to distribute funds among like operational budgets, like, I don't know, events, travels, and so on. Yeah, I don't think I have to show you this example since we just saw that, or you explored that. Another example could be the membership organizations. So basically organization that use the platform for their members. So think of a makerspace that, for example, uses part of their membership fee to basically co-fund their furniture or their materials, their tools. So basically, this is what we see quite often, that a percentage of that membership fee is distributed, or the surplus, to the members, and they basically set up ideas on the platform that is then allocated by the members. So just to mention a few examples, also this case is mentioned on our website. So for example, WWF Switzerland does that to, within the whole country, showcase different projects that then the different local communities are then able to fund, and part of the membership fees are used for that. Another example here is the Blivande case, which actually is some sort of a makerspace. I'm actually also happy to have Hugi here, who is part of that. So if you want to say a few words about that while I show the website, if that's okay, we could do that. What do you think, Hugi?
Yeah, sure thing. Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so Blivande is a community co-working space and maker space and event space and general all-around creative community in Stockholm. If you, David, if you go up and you set the filter to also include the completed and the funded, then you'll see here the sort of stuff that's being funded by the members. And the way it works is that any member of the space can volunteer to be on the committee. And the committee is usually around 10 people out of the total 100 members of the house. And if you're a part of the committee, every month you get one equal share of 500 euros or $500 that can be invested into tools, equipment, materials, anything that the members themselves propose to fund. You can save your funds over time. So if somebody wants to buy a piece of machinery that costs, say, $3,000, then the community needs to save up a bit over time. But this has happened, in fact. Sometimes also during holiday seasons, or when we have a little bit more surplus, we might increase this monthly budget. And then, of course, it is faster able to fund these sort of big investments. Yep. So that's how it's used in the Blivande case. It has really helped a lot with also bringing down the overhead of arguing about what to buy, and then having these bottlenecks of people that need to make the decisions, making certain people unhappy while making other people's happy. And now, we've sort of outsourced the making people happy and unhappy to the community itself.
Thanks so much, Hugi, for being available to give us this insight into how it's used at Tau and Blivande. Another group of users is really communities and networks that, for example, use this platform for funding a commons of that specific community or for granting within a network. So maybe it's best to show you an example to explain what we mean by that. So here we have the Swiss Grassroots Fund for the Climate. It's basically a fund that had 150,000 Swiss francs available and decided that it would be nicer actually to co-grant this together with the climate community within Switzerland. So basically, they can put up project ideas within Switzerland, and basically the funding happens via this community. So there is a couple of stewards who then in the end basically distribute the money amongst those projects, and the projects themselves basically are set up for by the community members of the Swiss climate movement. So yeah, I currently don't have any money to spend here because I'm not part of that. But you see here, for example, this is what is still left within this round. And also the Borderland Festival as like one festival or event could be one example of this, where people basically would co-finance what is happening within this event. But as it has been mentioned, I think within the chat already or asked, yeah, actually to start with that, you really need to find a way how people actually end up with money in their accounts. And there's really different models how to do that. Basically, there's different ways for money governance that you can use. One would be that you really use this platform as like an internal crowdfunding model. So basically, the person who contributed funds, who sent money, for example, to Open Collective, receives 100% of this amount in their personal Cobudget account, because the platform itself, Cobudget, doesn't hold any real money. So all of that is basically virtual. The second model would be that the money that is collected by the community is basically put into a common pot and then redistributed amongst the members or part of the members within that community. This would be, for example, the case within the Swiss Climate Fund, where a group of stewards basically then redistribute the money to the projects. So this can be, of course, happening through equal distribution or proportional. And if it's proportional, it's really up to you to decide what is actually the proportions or the reasoning for distributing the money. So it can be around like different roles that someone is holding, like the steward role, for example. It can be for different projects, but also, for example, time invested. If you want to have a look more in detail, there's a link in the slide deck where you can read more about the redistribution algorithms. Third would be basically a mix of both. So you can basically combine both of the models to really customize your governance model that really suits your needs and basically fits your value. So basically, this could be that 1% of all the money that comes in goes into the account of the person that is providing those funds. And the rest could go into a common pot that then is going to be redistributed to everyone following this algorithm that you chose based on the values or the needs that you might have. Or the other way around, there's really many options within this third model. Oh yeah. So over to you, Tomomi, actually for some hands-on experience now. And of course, just a side note, there will be time for questions later on. So if you have them, maybe make a note. We're gonna have plenty of time later to address any questions, but we thought it's maybe easier if you have a look yourself first before, yeah, as this might clear a lot of things up. So yeah, over to you, Tomomi.
I think we'll take a break first, no? 5 minutes? There's no timer, so if everyone could be back at whatever at 55. we'll jump into the hands-on part.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Tomomi.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Just typing with my answer to Alex here. We planned for 2 hours, but we're moving quite quickly. And so I think we'll wrap up a little bit earlier. I'm imagining people are back in their seats. Thanks, Billy. Yes, please get in touch if you'd like to chat. Yeah, would love to hear about what you have in mind and how we might support. Yes, emojis to tell us if you're back.
Or you can also make animal sounds.
Getting some thumbs up.
Or animal emojis, right?
Or animal emojis, yes. Okay, so now we are gonna take some time for you to create an account and actually start using the tool. There are two options. One, you can jump in as a participant. So somebody who might be coming up with an idea and engaging with other ideas and then later funding them. And we are going to open up the Berberland demo round that David was showing us earlier. The other option, if you're more curious about how to set up a round, like how to design that page, like the questions people should answer so that they kind of pitch their projects, that's the second option. And for this one, we'll put you in pairs and we would ask one person to screen share and kind of work through the different settings together. And then David and I will stay in the plenary space, and please come get us if you have any questions. Okay, so if everyone could rename yourself and choose whether you want to join group A, join the dummy round, or if you want to start creating a round as an admin, please put B. And we'll use that information to create breakouts on the go.
And maybe we give people 2 minutes or so to decide. What do you think? So
yes, that sounds good.
Maybe play some music while people decide.
And just restating, just you're putting A in front of your name if you want to go to a group where you will be joining around as a participant, and you're putting B before your name in Zoom if you want to join, if you want to create a round as an admin.
So what we will do is basically putting you then into pairs for everyone who wants to experience this tool as an admin. And if you want to explore the tool as a participant, you can explore on your own.
Jennifer, maybe you just put O in front of your name as an observer or something like that. Maybe that will be fine.
Yeah.
Nuprasta kursi porkan tähti jalkani puhti kutkutti. Jeevan neiti se tyttö se vahti vaan kylään jeevan jykkätti. Sillä ei mitä silloin killot haita kun mä tamsan mä laajasta laitan. Sali veli jipput tupput tapput äppät tipput hiljalleen. Jeevan suari vähnäsellä koimas donne toivotti. Pää oli märkä mä joikkaselle ja viudusi vonkuja vaivutti. Haittata poikon merkys haita sillä kalasku laajasta laitan. Sali veli jipput tupput tapput äppät tipput hiljalleen.
Okay, I think that's everyone. So we're gonna send you into breakouts now. And in this breakout, basically those who are participants will receive the invite link, and the admins basically just go to cobudget.com and can set up their round as they want to set it up. And the idea would be, as it will be pairs, so two admins, so to say, and maybe one observer will be in one breakout. So it's obviously easiest if you would then, one person would do screen share and you can have a look on the same page together, because that's probably the easiest way to go. Any questions? I see a thumbs up.
It's a bit of a trial by fire.
Okay.
But yeah, looks like everyone's up for it.
How much time do we have, Tomomi, for this?
Let's take 15 minutes.
Cool.
You think? Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mike. Yes, screen share enabled for participants.
Is anyone else getting a server error when they try to log in to Cobudget?
I don't so far, but maybe try refreshing. And if the problem persists, you can grab us.
Seems okay on this side.
Okay. Should I send people away, Tomomi?
Do we want to share the invite link? Or
Yes,
is
I
it-
got to send it
You do.
in within the breakout. I will join the
Gotcha.
breakout there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, great. Great, let's see what happens.
So I'm gonna jump into room 1. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Gonna close the rooms now.
Mhm.
I might just, if I might have a moment when they come back, I'll just do the case study on OC and just maybe share that.
Oh,
Cool.
nice.
Nice. Welcome back. There's still 5 minutes on the count, 5 seconds on the counter. Yeah,
Mhm.
like me, whenever there's a button popping up, red button, I have to click it.
Ah, there we are.
Welcome back, everyone. Mike, you wanted to share something, right?
Yeah. All right. So, you all have been in a very heady theoretical space. Understand that it's always harder to grasp the concept of a tool, if you don't have an immediate project application. So I hope that you found one, that helped you to situate how you might use the tool. And I just wanted to share just some feedback on the way that OC, or in fact, this is not an OC case study. This is an OCF case study. Use the right acronyms, Mike. So Open Collective Foundation back in the middle of 2022 was going through its strategic planning process. We had released a strategic plan back in June of 21, and we were trying to prioritize what were the things that we wanted to spend money on in our strategic plan in 2022. So we set up a co-budget that didn't have real dollars, right? The dollars were just like votes, right? It's just like, hey, we want to prioritize this thing. Let's see how popular this thing is. So we set up a co-budget instance. We had some buckets in there that you will see when you click on that link for participatory governance, for Solidarity School, for the fundraising and grant writing support, for building a political activity policy. These were all things that we were trying to figure out what's the main priority that we should be spending our available surplus on, over the coming year. And we were able to surface inside of that co-budget that the most popular instances of things that folks wanted to fund was going to be Solidarity School and the participatory governance elements. So, you know, the very thing that you are in is one of the things that was funded in our internal strategic prioritization process. And that's just one way that you might use Cobudget. Again, you know, we weren't using real dollars in our example because we have a specific way that we go about budgeting that's different for a 501c3 at the moment. But that's an example of how we attempted to use the tool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike, for bringing this case study as to exemplify how OCF uses this, and another example how the tool and the platform can be used. As promised, we'd also like to give some space now to address any questions, doubts, unclarities that you have, maybe that popped up when you were experiencing using the platform. So we'd like to first take a couple of minutes just to reflect if you have any questions, and we prepared two slides. So the slide deck that we shared before, if you join us on slide 30 and 31, there's two questions that we'd like to explore together. One is like, after this experience, after hearing Mike, after hearing Tomomi and me and Hugi, is there maybe an idea of how you might apply this, either collaborative funding or Cobudget, the platform, in your context? Feel free to drop anything on the red post-its. And are there maybe questions that you still have, anything that came up in your experience or from you as an observer, seeing others using the platform? Please drop those questions on the yellow post-its on slide 31 and 32. And then we're going to look at that together and address anything that came up. Make sense? Okay. maybe let's use 1 more minute to come up with any questions. And of course, we're always available after the session to answer any questions that might come up. Okay. Yeah, looking at the questions and the amount of questions, I think we can actually address them all, probably. Let's see if we can answer them all. But let me maybe bringing them all onto one slide. You want to start addressing one of those, Kamui, while I do that?
Yes. And Shiggy, if you want to jump in as well, please help us. And thank you, everyone. Okay, let's just take it from the top. For one bucket, can we have several currencies channeled in? Answer is no. You need to choose one currency for your round. And I would be curious to hear what your needs are around this, if it's something that might block you from using Cobudget. Thank you for the question. How did you handle situations when people needed more budget after funding was closed? Can people ask for new funding rounds? Or is there simply no more budget than the initial one? Yeah, this is such a great question, and really has to do a lot with kind of the philosophy of how we budget or how we fund projects, right? So your group, it's really up to your group on how you want to handle this. If you decide that there is more money available, you can come in and add it the way that David did in Group A, and it can be allocated to it can go towards funding the projects. That's a non-technical decision that should be made in terms of how you want to fund your projects. Can people ask for new funding? Yeah, so this would all happen kind of outside of the platform. I will say that it should be, the decision should be communicated upfront, whether there's going to be more funding or if this is it. And the decision is, okay, how do we distribute these funds? From a functionality point of view, you can decrease the budget ask that you're making with your bucket if you feel like, if that team feels like a smaller budget is still sufficient to keep going. And these are all like very critical decisions of how you want to think about the way the funding should happen. David, do you wanna, or Hugo, do you wanna add anything?
I think that was, yeah, included everything that I could say on this. Maybe I can pick the next one.
Yes.
Can we use the platform during the Dream Together phase, or preferable to come with a finalized idea and insert it here for collecting funds? Well, no, we would really also encourage to dream together on this platform. This is where the committing function, the tab that you saw below the buckets or next to the buckets, within the buckets, sorry, comes into play. So this is, for example, also how it was used in the WeShare community, that there was a phase designated for dreaming. So people would put up ideas, and there would be a phase where funding is actually not open yet, and people would discuss ideas and craft them, co-create them, sharpen them, polish them before funding was actually opened.
Yeah, I can add a little bit there that I can only second David. It works really well. And in fact, for me, the main benefit of the Cobudget platform is to increase the strength of the relationships and the density of relationships between people in community with each other. So I've seen tons of examples where one project has been put up in a very early phase, so somebody hasn't really thought through exactly how they want to do things, and that project then being developed by the expertise of the other people in the community, helping them figure out the details. What does this cost? What will you need? How will you do it in order for it to actually work out the way you hoped? So to me, that's the main really powerful strength of the tool when it's really done right by a community that has learned to use it. So absolutely.
If the funding is still open, can I reshift money from one bucket to another? So the answer is no. Once you have committed money to a bucket, you can't cancel it and move to another one.
What is
So
possible
this-
though, that the bucket can be canceled, and if the bucket is canceled, all the money will be reverted to their funders. But I, as a funder, in my role as a funder, I cannot.
Go Hoogie.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I mean, reshifting money from one, there's no money here in real, I mean, there's no real money in the buckets. It's just points, right? It's just, we've just like, I can add more money or reduce the amount of money I have to distribute, right? So shifting money between.
But that was because you were an admin. So because you were an admin, you could get balances for people, but
right.
you as a regular user can't do that. Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was admin, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
It's like if you're like a banker, you can of course print your own money, but the regular non-bankers cannot do that.
Right. But I mean, there's no real money in the system. I think that's also an important aspect of what we're doing.
But most of the time when people are running co-budget rounds, there is real money. So that there will be the actual money on the platform corresponds to some real money that exists.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, let's say that there's money left when we're done, then I can just reduce the whole round's amount of money and add it to another round.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, this you can do if it's not being committed to a bucket.
And seeing a related question in the chat from Erica, so the money allocated to each participant would represent what they've already given. Yeah, this really depends on the money governance model. So, for example, one group might decide that they collect their membership fees via Open Collective, for example. So the money actually sits, the real money sits within Open Collective, and there might be a role of someone who actually looks at that each month, for example, and then transfer those amounts to the corresponding Cobudget page where everyone basically has a profile and then gets this money on the Cobudget platform. But if you move Cobudget within the platform, no money from Open Collective gets moved automatically, so to say.
How do you use this process with folks who don't use technology? Yes, great question. We've seen cases where groups hold in-person workshops for the dreaming phase. And so maybe it doesn't need to be you who puts up a bucket. You can do it in person in a group or team up and do it together. I think that's one part. The funding part itself, it does, I think, require you to learn how to use the tool. I don't think I know of any case where that's not been the case unless you have someone else doing it on your behalf.
Yeah, just remembering this situation with the city of Malmo, right, where Jacob is basically facilitating the process. So I think they're basically the role of the facilitator guiding through the experience becomes more important to really support the people, include the people who might be not as digitally versed as others. Yeah.
And it might be that one person has an idea and just starts the bucket. And then somebody else comes in and helps to flesh out more of the idea. And so that's another way that people can collaborate if there's kind of disparity in technical skill.
Yeah, I just want to maybe chime in on that too. And this goes back to when I was participating in Thriving Networks, and I was in there with one of my cohort members, Fredrika, from Wonderbund, I think it's called. Fredrika was talking about Open Collective, and she was like, it's a technical facilitator for money. And I think of Cobudget in very much the same way. So the goal of the tool is really just to figure out how to augment whatever facilitation process you're doing around money. And so maybe it is like sort of an in-person gathering that you might be using the tool in to visualize how money is moving between a project or what things groups want to fund. So the responsibility, definitely to David's point, is on the facilitator to figure out how to bring those folks into the conversation. If it's not sufficient to just send the link out and say, everybody who can log in can vote on this money. Check.
Thanks, Mike. How often do suggesting funding rounds happen? This really, I would say, depends on the metabolism of that specific group, the community. So there's more high frequency groups that have a lot of interaction where it would make sense to have more funding rounds, but there is events like the Borderlands, which is an annual event, so the funding happens annually, right? So I think it's hard to say that like there's no one size fits all. And yeah, but who you also want to jump in there? Yeah.
No, I'd turn the question around and rather ask, how often do people in the community need things? And how often are there resources to be had for people who need things? Because the cadence can be set to whatever that is. At Blivande, for example, people need new tools all the time in a makerspace. So you can put them up all the time and there's new money coming in every month. It wouldn't make sense there to do it once a year. So really that should be your guiding question.
And I believe Blivande has different rounds that work on different timelines, right? That's also another way to do it. The hike example that Greater Than shared, we run this twice a year. It takes a few weeks for the Cobudget process, and then we have a couple of months for the project to be executed and delivered, and then we'll take a break and we'll go again. Okay. Where is the space for conversation, questions with this tool? Is this about conversations about the bucket ideas?
I don't know who brought this question, but maybe you could clarify.
It was yes, but it was answered already. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Flowchart in the example. Oh, sorry, someone go on.
Flowchart, an example of using OCF and co-budgeting seems to put collecting money on OCF as first in the process, but it seems to make budget first. Budget first before fundraising. I'm not sure if I understand the question.
No, I think I understand the question. So it's true that this can be a bit confusing, right? Because what you're saying is, in the chart, it said you collect money first through Open Collective, then you decide what to do with it, and then you pay out through Open Collective, right? But then there's the question of on Cobudget, you create your ideas, and then you are, quote unquote, collecting funds, right, from the participants who are distributing those funds, which is happening then in the Cobudget phase. But this is because the two things are a bit different. In the Cobudget circle, you're collecting the funds from the participants that have been given the funds to allocate, and those funds in turn were already collected on Open Collective. So I think that's what the confusion is about here. That like when you're doing it on Cobudget, you're actually using money that already exists on the account of the organization. But in order to get that money in there, you need to fundraise it. But sometimes, and I will say this, there is a use case for Cobudget when you would create all the things that you want to do first, and then you go to funders and you say, we can make all this amazing stuff happen if you give us money. So there is a way also to turn it around like that. But of course, that it's a less common use case than people fundraising first and then deciding what to do.
I think the second question also connects to that. I suppose I'm just wondering whether this tool is mainly for documenting or for active funding or fundraising as well. Yeah, this really connects to how you're using the platform, but currently we're also working on a feature which allows buckets to directly also receive funds. So there is no need basically to have collected this money otherwise from other sources, but buckets can be funded directly as well. But this is currently still in development.
Yeah, what I can say by that is just that our main goal right now is to build an integration with Open Collective, so that you through Cobudget can actually go and say, I want to fund this directly with my money using my credit card, and that money then ending up in the collective and being earmarked for that project. So that's an integration we'd like to build.
I'd like to say something as well. Like one of the main things that who you taught me, or like that made me understand what we're talking about here when we're talking about Cobudget and Open Collective, is that Cobudget is a platform for decision making, and Cobudget,
Open Collective,
and Open Collective is the wallet where the actual money is, and it's a tool for that. So when we use Cobudget, all we're doing is basically it's a platform for decision making, and like where you have like, here are the ideas, what ideas do we want to put the money in, etc.
Okay.
How do you ensure people aren't just putting money into buckets they propose? Does it work better if there's a limitation on how many buckets can be added? This is a very frequently asked question. Can I fund my own bucket?
I can say that so there is a feature that sets a limit to with how much you can fund a single bucket. So that is used quite a lot in the Borderland, where we say that each bucket from each person can only receive a particular amount to sort of make people spread out their money between buckets. So that's one way in which we prevent that.
You could argue that it's a good thing for you to fund your own bucket. If you don't think it's worth funding, how can we expect other people to? And so these are like the dynamics that start to play out when funding opens, because you can see who's funding the buckets as well. And this is like very interesting transparency that you don't normally get, right?
Yeah, and during that strategic planning process, right, there were definitely people who were all in on an idea, and they took all of their funding and they dumped it on an idea. It was probably an idea that they were talking about a lot throughout the team, but that also meant for us in the team that they were probably going to take on a lot of work to move that idea forward. So it is a good thing, because it's like, you know, they somebody wants to do the idea, and we have a group of people who believe in the idea. So, you know, yeah, it's a really good, it's an activity that, you know, is valuable to fund your own thing.
And I'd like to say also, this speaks to another related question, which is that, okay, but what do we do about that this can become a popularity contest? You know, the people with the most social clout are going to be the people who have the easiest time getting their things funded. And whereas I think that we need to sort of work to also lift up those who don't have as much social clout, it can also actually just be a consequence that the people who have the most social clout, if they get the funding, they will also be able to make really great projects happen with the people who supported them. So we can also look at it from the positive side, that you know, having that driver force can be a good thing as well.
Mm.
And also seeing the question in the chat, what is the cost to use Cobudget? Yeah, Mike, I think already answered that in the chat. So basically, it's free to use for you to set up your round. If you would like to collect various rounds within one group, basically, you would pay a monthly fee of 20 euros. So basically, this would give you the option of having various rounds within one group. So let's say if you want to run a monthly round, and you want to access them without one overview, this would be the feature that would be enabled. And of course, there's the custom version. So if you would like to set up anything customized, then yeah, just get in touch with us and we figure something out.
So what this means is that we can set up a white label that has your domain on it and all the rest. So that's the thing that we can do if you get in touch.
So looking at time, yeah, there's, I think, one last question, but I'm not sure whether we answered this already. Has anyone used it as a tool to support crowdfunding? I'm not sure whether I understand the question.
Yeah, that was my question, I guess. My brain's kind of fuzzy, but like if we wanted to use, I think, was it Mike who was saying that some people used it for crowdfunding, that you could set up the buckets and you could bring it. No, so I think they said they could bring it to impossible funders, but what you could also just set it up, couldn't you, as something public, and it could be used for crowdfunding?
So at the moment, there are no direct fundraising features built into Cobudget. At the moment, Cobudget is a tool that is used to make decisions about funds that you've already fundraised. However, we are working on integrations that would make it possible specifically to connect Open Collective to Cobudget, so that you could go on Cobudget, see things that you know, there might be a budget to distribute to, but to add to that budget by directly paying with your card to a bucket. And that would then go to Open Collective, and that money would then be earmarked for that bucket. So we're working on that.
Okay.
It's not yet.
Thank you.
I have one follow on to an earlier chat question, and then just, you know, and one just, you know, again, landing point before I maybe pitch it off to you all to close. But the earlier question that Uhu had was about curious about applications that allow admins to make points represent time, talent, time, treasure, currency. So I think maybe what I've been sharing around the strategic planning process was an example of us again using really time and thought investment, you know, as a means to kind of think about what things we put in the strategic planning process, what things we prioritized for our strategic plan. So, you know, there is no way to kind of create a fake currency to my knowledge, right? These are all sort of, you know, just basic sort of national currencies you can select in the tool. But, you know, there is a way that you can think about, you know, where people want to invest their time, and it just might have to be a dollar, you know, amount or something like that that's listed in Cobudget for that. So that's just one way to maybe think about that's a sort of meta use of the tool. But the other thing that I wanted to share is that I was just in this week in a budget planning process with New Economy Coalition, and, you know, we were looking at a spreadsheet, and, you know, we spent 2 hours looking at that spreadsheet. we were doing the exact same thing that we might do in Cobudget, which is that we were trying to decide, can we pull off, Common Bound 2024? Well, if we want to do it, we have to fundraise for it. So that's an example of, that's a bucket, right? Common Bound 2024 is a bucket that could be on the platform. And the degree to which we are able to galvanize fundraising around that type of event would determine if we could fund that bucket, But, I'm sure that co-budget is a lot more of a fun way than looking at that spreadsheet. So, budgeting to funding, spreadsheets to co-budget, some analogies for you all. Check.
Thanks for bringing up the word fun, Mike. I have my personal experience of using Cobudget was I didn't know budgeting could be a fun and generative process. Something that we don't normally get to experience. All right, thank you for all of the great questions and quite in-depth conversations. If you want to follow me to page 33, this is our last slide with different links to all of the documentation. We have case studies. We also offer advisory and process design services, and also can run introductory sessions and workshops as part of that process. We have a public event coming up that will be in early 2023, a little bit similar to what we did today, but spending more time in setting up year-round. And it just in general, we're so happy that you're all here. And would very much love to have a chat if this is something that you're interested in running for your group. Please just email us at hello@cobudget.com, and yeah, let's hop on a call and talk about it. We have a checkout question.
Yeah. So before we close, similar to checking in, we'd like also to check out together. And so we'd like to know, what are you leaving with this session? And instead of doing a plenary round with 14 people in 5 minutes, we'd like to use the chat to do that. So I'm just putting the question into the chat. And the idea would be that you just type the answer to this question into the chat without hitting enter yet. And we're gonna all hit enter at the same time, which will result in nice, what we call chatterfall. And this gives us also then the opportunity to read this and open our mics and say goodbyes. And if you have your answer in the chat, maybe give me a thumbs up. Alternatively, give us an emoji or an animal sound. I see some thumbs. Another thumb. Are you Yukas? Are you Kugi? Wonderful. So I count to 3 now, and the invitation is that once we hit 3, we're gonna hit enter and unmute yourselves, say our goodbyes, and have a read what the chat says, what we're leaving with. Thanks a lot for you all showing up and for having us. Mike, 1, 2, 3, go. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Post it to the events page for more Solidarity School sessions.
All right.
Your appreciation. Y'all have a good day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.